Welcome to the Trailblazers podcast, where we chat with women who are trailblazing in business and we talk about their journeys, their pivots, and their missions that are reshaping industries. Today's guest talks about something we all do but rarely think twice about, and she's on a mission to change the way that we think about something as basic and as powerful as, well, why does we matter? And oh yes, you heard that right, we're going there. And this is a bold, brilliant and necessary conversation with Giovanna Forte, co-founder of Forte Medical. Welcome, Giovanna. Take us to the moment you realised that we matters. What happened and why did it hit you so hard?
Well, it didn't so much hit me as it hit my brother. Okay. You may ask, my brother was an NHS GP for over 20 years. And whenever he asked women to pee into a little universal container, they would come back red-faced, angry, wet bottle, hands that have been peed on, and say, why is this acceptable? This method of collecting urine must have been invented by a man. This is even without, he would ask for midstream, but giving midstream is very difficult because you either have to start to pee, stop, position the tube under your perineum, carry on peeing, or as the Patient UK website currently says, insert the vessel into the urine stream. So you can imagine urine's going everywhere. Mm-hmm. And in the end, he rang me up one day and he said, this woman's come in and she was really angry. It's undignified, it's unhygienic. If men had to give urine samples, there would be a different way. Why is it like this for women? And he said, what do I do about it? And I said, well, make something. I was running a very successful PR business at the time.
Very blasé about this. Get on with it.
Make something. So he did. He came up with the idea of a funnel that folded, that came out, that rejected the first bit of urine, collected the midstream, but that was shaped to the woman's perineum so that you could hold it against the body and everything was clean and hygienic. So he came up with this. He entered it for Medical Futures, was one of the very first innovation awards in the healthcare sector. Mm-hmm. And he won that award. And he said to me, I'm going to this award ceremony. I'm going to talk to all the media journalists about it. And I went, no, you're not, because I was in PR. No, you've got to make it first. He went, well, how do I do that? And I went, well, because some of my clients were product designers. I think you totally do this, this, and this. And he said, well, can you help me? And I thought, oh, how hard can it be? So we joined forces and got the patent sorted out, started researching materials and so forth. And that's how I got going. And actually, the more I looked at the whole problem, I knew it was a problem because I've had children, I've had urinary tract infections. In fact, a few years ago, I ended up with sepsis because of badly prescribed antibiotics for a UTI. And I thought, actually, this is not so much, it's a practical problem, but it's actually a clinical problem because the more I looked into it and the more I found out why midstream is important, I realised that this is a utterly, like much in women's health, is a completely overlooked area. And even a lot of clinicians and nurses say, well, if it's wrong, we'll just do it again. Now, that's costing healthcare providers a huge amount of money to repeat the appointment, repeat the visit, repeat the sample, repeat the lab process.
And a lot of women might not want to repeat the process. That's the thing. Why is it not right the first time through that? I'm really interested to know what is important about midstream, because you're right. Many of us women hear it. You need to take midstream, get it everywhere, but they never explain why, actually. And I bet many of us are guilty, myself included, of just going, you get what you're given, figure out.
Well, okay, so when you start to pee, you have flora and bacteria on the skin of your perineum, your vulva, and that flora and bacteria and what the clinicians poetically call debris will wash off the skin, and if it goes into the sample, it will create a mixed growth called contamination. And that mixed growth will then mask the bacteria that they're looking for in the lab. Also, the dipsticks were invented in the 50s and haven't really been changed since. They can respond to that mixed growth, giving you a false positive. So if it's dipped and it's a false positive, the guidelines say if it's a positive dip, you provide a broad spectrum antibiotic immediately. Now, in an antenatal trial in West Herts, we reduced those false positives by between 50 and 70%. So we save those women getting antibiotics they don't need. And when you're pregnant, you don't want antibiotics you don't need because that will affect the fetus as well as you. And it can also stimulate obesity and diabetes later in life for the fetus. So, not good. No one wants antibiotics they don't need. So that's basically kind of the long and the short of it. You need the midstream, you need the bladder urine because that's got the information. Now, there are some new urine tests. If you've got a chronic UTI, that means that the bacteria got into the lining of the bladder. So for that, you want the first stream because that has epithelial cells from the lining of the bladder in it. So if you've got a chronic UTI, first stream is probably better.
Right.
We've sorted that out too, by the way.
I would love to know about that one too.
And midstream is what you want for routine antenatal and UTI screening.
Okay. Tell me about what you've just said. You sorted out the first part of the stream. Is it a spin on what you already have? I'd love to see the device if you have it.
Okay, well, let me show you. So this is our new pack. It's a clinical pack. See, you can't really see it, can you? No. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
So that's a clinical pack, which you peel. Not going to peel because I don't want to waste one. I have one I prepared earlier. You take this out of the pack. There you've got your Peezy. You've got your tube. Now, this is smaller than the tube you're normally given because this is the tube that goes into the urine analyzer. So when the GP or whoever sends a universal container or something else to the lab, they then have to pour it into one of these. Mm-hmm. So that involves more time, more intervention, and more potential contamination. You put this on here, screw it on. This sits against the body, and then you just pee. You don't have to worry about anything. This automates the process. So the first 10 to 20 ml come through here. That sponge expands and pushes the midstream into the tube.
Right.
So when you've finished, you count to 10 to let the sponge drain. You take this off. Now, this is now engineered so that there's a displacement mechanism here. And when you pull the tube down, if the urine is very full, the level will drop as that comes out, so you won't spill. And then the tube goes back on. This goes into yellow bag waste, or it's recyclable. There is no sustainable medical grade polymer at the moment, so this is the best we can get. So this then goes straight to the lab, and it goes straight into the machines. Now, when we went to see one of the Public Health England lab directors, he said that at that moment he had 3 lab technicians off sick with a repetitive strain injury from pouring urine into little bottles. Wow. That's something we hadn't even considered. So when I took Midstream some years ago to University of Surrey, to their oncology research professor, and he said, well, no, I don't need Midstream for this. I need first void urine because cancer biomarkers and proteins and so forth they're heavier than the other matter in the bladder, and they sink to the top of the urethra, so they come out in first stream urine. So I went back to the office and I spoke to my colleague Owen, and I said, right, if we attach the bottle here and get rid of this and have an overflow, then we capture the bit we currently get rid of. Boom, first stream.
Yes.
So we've developed that, we've prototyped it, we've done proof of concept, we've got it ready for market. And now we're relaunching Peezy. Once that's sort of up and running, we'll get first stream out there.
That's incredible and that was by accident, which is how a lot of inventions are.
Yeah. And also it's the kind of empirical Blue Peter modelling. When my brother, Dr. Vincent Forte, he first designed Peezy, it was with bits of paper and acrylic and tape. And then he trialled it with using a catheter leg bag and a tap, so that the first bit of urine was blue, and that didn't end up in the Peezy tube. So we knew that midstream is being captured. These things, you don't always need a sort of lab to do all this stuff. You can do it over the kitchen sink. And that's how things like cat's eyes and paper clips and heavens knows what started. By accident, someone came up, realised that there was a problem, decided to solve the problem.
The most useful products that we have.
Well, it's practical.
Yeah.
Practical, and it has a purpose, and it satisfies an unmet need, basically. And these sorts of things have been overlooked. So
you talk a lot, I have been following you, about antimicrobial resistance, and you say that women are at the front of AMR, which is what you which is the term you use. What does that mean for women, and what should we know about that?
Antimicrobial resistance is when the bacteria in your body are immune to the antibiotic. Now, this happens because broad-spectrum antibiotics are designed to scattergun. Let's just have a go, and we might get the right bacteria, we might not. So a targeted antibiotic is when you've identified the problem bacteria, and it will go straight to that bacteria. It's designed to kill those bacteria. Now, what happens with urinary tract infection guidelines is that, and actually NICE have recently issued a new one. So it says what to do. Take a urine sample dip. If the dip is positive, give a broad spectrum antibiotic straight away. It doesn't say take a midstream sample. That happens a few pages later. But every single global guideline for women's health, for urine collection, specifies midstream. You have to give a midstream. But this word doesn't appear in the primary care guideline for taking a urine sample. It just isn't there. Why? Why is that not there? So if you're providing a contaminated sample and you've got false positives and you're getting antibiotics you don't need, then your bacteria are going to become immune to those antibiotics because they're not doing anything. I'm not a scientist, so I probably haven't got this absolutely right, but in principle, that's what's going on. Now, 70% of the broad spectrum antibiotics are bacteria and UTI already immune to broad spectrum antibiotics, 70%. And between 34 and 60% of women are getting antibiotics that they don't need.
What classifies, for the ladies who are listening who don't know a lot about antibiotics, what would be classified as a broad spectrum antibiotic? Would that be something like amoxicillin, for example?
Amoxicillin, nitrofurantoin, what's the other one? My brain's just gone completely.
That's okay.
Erythromycin, these sorts of ones, yeah. And then but the targeted ones are very powerful. They're the ones you want because they go in, they do the job, and that's it. So you really need to make sure, first of all, that you've got a midstream urine sample. And also, when I had an asymptomatic UTI, which means I didn't have any symptoms, and I went to a new patient check, and I didn't have a Peezy with me, but I did try and give them a midstream. And they said, oh, you've got a urinary tract infection. I said, well, I haven't. I've got any symptoms. Take these antibiotics. She gave me nitrofurantoin. And I took that and went back, and she said, oh, it's still there. And I said, but I don't think it's there at all. I don't have symptoms. And she gave me the same antibiotic, a stronger dose for longer. And now I know you're not supposed to do that. And she got quite cross. I'm the doctor. I know what I'm doing. So I took these antibiotics. And within 36 hours, we'd then gone away to Isle of Wight for a friend's birthday. I said to my husband, I feel dreadful. I'm going to go back to our B&B. And by the time he came back, I was shaking and shivering and sweating. And he said, but it's not cold. It's not hot. It's not cold. What's going on? So he rang my brother Vincent, doctor, and told him. Vincent just said, take it to A&E straight away. I went to A&E and I had early stage sepsis because I'd taken this antibiotic for too long that I shouldn't have been taken. And the doctor in the hospital put his head in his hand and said, when will GP stop doing this? This is insane.
What advice, having experienced that, would you give to other women who would like to take an antibiotic which they know will be more effective? And I say that from personal experience too.
Honestly, my advice is if you have a UTI, the doctor says you have a UTI, then ask for a painkiller so that you don't feel the symptoms, and ask for that, insist that that sample goes to the lab for analysis. Because when they culture it, they can then identify the problem bacteria and you can get the antibiotic that you need. That's what I do now. On one or two occasions I've had a UTI, I've taken a painkiller for a couple of days, and then when the culture comes back, I get the right antibiotic. But I'm quite bossy, and so the doctors they'll do it grudgingly. I get a lot of rolled eyes and everything, but I know what's involved now. So yes, make sure you give a midstream. Ask them for a Peezy. Make sure you get a midstream, and then insist on a painkiller, paracetamol, Solpadeine, or something like that. That works, and then get the targeted antibiotic. That's for you and the health and safety of your body. That's the thing I would recommend.
Which is very helpful to know, because I think most of us women, if we can feel symptoms, you become a bit desperate and you don't want it to get worse.
Yeah.
You don't know that a painkiller will take it away, and just wait a few days and it will all be better once you start taking the right targeted antibiotic.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. The medical profession probably won't agree with me, but then I'm a patient and I know best.
And you know your body best.
I know my body, yeah. And I've learned the hard way, yeah.
You do mention that COVID tanked your momentum of Peezy. 5 years later, what does the rebuild look like behind the scenes?
It's very tough. We were scaling particularly in antenatal. We were up to 10,000 units a month. This was March 2020. And it had taken about 3 years to even start to get some traction. So then it started to double each month, and we got to 10,000 units a month. And then all of a sudden, point of care testing was suspended. I thought, God, what does that mean for us? Well, I soon found out, because no revenue. No one could buy anything. There was no point of care testing going on, even in antenatal. So I looked at this tumbleweed going through our revenue stream and thought, well, what do we do now? So I looked at Peezy at home. I saw the home testing thing coming, and I put together a business plan for Peezy at home. And I thought, if we get a network of labs organised, and we put a dipstick in with the Peezy, and we post this to people at home, then if it's a positive dip, they can send it to the lab, and we'll put painkillers in with the thing. And then I just thought, actually, that's not really what we do. And my colleague Owen said to me, we make stuff. We don't organise networks of labs. That's just not what we do. Other people do that. And I thought, he's right. He's right. Let's stick to what we know and what we do. So we started contacting a lot of the digital home testing companies, but they had already set up their home tests, and they said, well, no one really bothers about Midstream. And if we take this on, it'll reduce our margin and we'll have to change our packaging and it'll cost too much. And I said, well, what about doing the job properly? Yeah, no one really bothers about that. We're just speeding up the way people do it now. So they weren't actually improving anything. They were just speeding up the unreliable dipstick process. But then we started to find new tech companies who have developed the technology to identify problem bacteria in urine within 30 and 40 minutes, which is a game changer, an absolute game changer. So one of them we're talking to, they've actually designed their diagnostic cartridge to fit Peezy, because they said without the Midstream, it's pointless us doing this. So we've started to look at that. And while we were doing that, I was still trying to raise money. Now, we had £1 million worth of angel investment lined up at March 2020. And when our revenue disappeared, they went, oh, look, you've got no revenue, bye-bye. And off they went. So I then spent the next 2 years trying to work out what to do, basically mothballed the business, which has made sure I was able to pay Owen and a bit to me. And then just started to rebuild. I started to look for investment. But again, the investors would say, well, when you've got some revenue, come back. Because without revenue, we can't invest. But I need some revenue to make stock to sell again. Because by the time point of care testing came back, our stock was too short date to sell. So we were stuck. Anyway, I crowdfunded last year and we raised 209,000. And I thought, that's great. We can now we can set up a sales campaign, PR campaign, all of that, get back in the game. And then our manufacturing partner went into administration. So we couldn't make anything at all. So we then had to go get on the road and interview, had a beauty parade of manufacturers. And we found Pennine Healthcare, who they are a top banana manufacturer in health tech. All they do is healthcare. And they're helpful, they're informed, they know the regulatory stuff. They are absolutely brilliant. And they took us on going, okay, right, we've got no revenue or anything, but we think this is very good. We'll work with you. And they've been just the most fantastic partners. So now we're all the sales are looking a bit more promising. We've got a whole trust looking at taking Peezy on, and we have stock to sell them, which is the next best thing. We're talking now to a couple of major primary care distributors who would then buy, mark up and sell. So that's a great business model for us. And it's all looking a lot rosier in the garden. We've got 2 very big trials. One is starting now with Doncaster Bassett Law, antenatal, 600 pregnant women. And we're looking at better care, service improvement, clinical improvement. And one of the Public Health England labs is looking at trialling it on 2,000 women, because they are very concerned about the antimicrobial resistance. So they'll be looking at reduced prescribing and the improvement in targeting prescribing with this. And with 2,000 women from Public Health England lab, I think that trial will be a game changer for us and for all the women who have to give urine samples, which is why we're here.
And for those of us who don't always want to be taking antibiotics.
Yeah, exactly. So we can improve women's health. We can save them from antibiotics they don't need. We can save the NHS a huge amount of money. If you look at the cost of repeat testing, I think we can save about 10 million just on retest. But when you look at the efficiency savings, you take into account the cost of the repeat test, the repeat pathway costs, staff time. Those savings come to about 300 million. And that's just looking at antenatal tests. 300 million. With accurate urine collection.
The rest of the population of women who are not in that sector at the moment. You're relaunching now into a precision medicine era. What's different this time?
People get it. You're talking to people in the NHS who used to say, if it's not right, we'll do it again. And now they're going, oh, we've actually got to get it right first time, don't we? We don't want to get people back. The whole AMR focus and precision and prevention. We've got to stop this from getting worse. So the pivot that West Streeting's delivering, some people may or may not like. That's not my problem. I'm thrilled because it actually focuses on what we do. And we've been talking about precision and prevention for the last 10 years. And people have been going, yeah, even got the Department of Health Get It Right First Time campaign. We went to them and said, this gets it right first time. And Professor Tim Briggs, when we went to him before he even launched it, he said, oh, this could have saved £50,000 in my name alone, because you have to check that there's no UTI before you operate in orthopedic surgery, because a UTI can interfere with the surgery. If it's a positive dip, then they have to cancel the surgery, and that's expensive. So we thought, that's great, get it right, girthed, as they catchily call it. They're going to help us here. But then the leads there that were brought in said, we're not here to promote products. We're here to promote best practice. And I said, but this is best practice. Yes, but it's a product. And your industry.
It would be part of the best practice, though.
And my argument with that is like the Royal College of GPs journal. They declined to run a workshop on accurate midstream urine because they said the only way of doing it is using your device. And if we run this workshop, it might look like we're advertising your device, and we can't do that. I said, but hang on. You don't hesitate in mentioning brand names of drugs, do you? So what's the problem with not mentioning this and everything you say pointing to it as being a good thing? So there has been this sort of issue with devices, right? Medicines are always, and the pharma companies have got the money to lobby and pay for them to get that treatment. We don't. So at last, the health policy of precision prevention is actually looking at devices generally are geared towards prevention. And an industry is seen as the enemy making money out of health. Well, don't tell me the pharma industry don't do that in their cure.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's in business to make money. And if it
well, how much money do you need? I want to make sure my very patient shareholders get a very good return. Yeah. But at the same time, we're here to perform a function, and the business has to have integrity. If the business doesn't have integrity, then the money's not good money as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you speak at schools and universities too, and I would love to know, having a daughter myself, what one mindset shift do you want the next wave of girls and young women to steal from you?
That you can do anything. If you really want to do something, you can do it. And that's why I always told my children, if there's something you really want to do, you get on with it, you do it. I trained as a secretary. I have no other qualifications. And I set up my first business when I was 26, when I'd had my first daughter, because my husband was in financial difficulty and said I had to go back to work. And I thought, I don't want to go back to work. I want this baby. So I set up my own business then, and I haven't really worked for anyone else since. But because I didn't leave school with great exam results, and because I didn't have a degree, people didn't really take me very seriously, but they do now. If you put your mind to something, you can do it. If it's the right thing to do it. My daughter, when she wants to be a chef, and her school said, don't worry about that, go and get a degree. And she came home and said, what do you think? And I said, ignore them. You want to be a chef, be a chef. And she's now an award-winning chef in Australia.
Oh, that's incredible. And she fulfilled her dreams of whatever she wanted to be.
Yeah. My elder daughter has travelled. She's done all the stuff she wanted to do. People were telling her to get a job, and she went, no, I need to learn about the world. So she went travelling. I think it's important for people to take their dreams seriously. Yeah, dreams are plans. So get on with it.
And my last question, what's the biggest myth about urine that you're dying to bust?
That it's sterile. It's not sterile. The bladder is not sterile. Your body is not sterile. How can urine be sterile? It's just not sterile. We've been doing some work with the Loyola Chicago Stritch School of Medicine. There's a guy there, Professor Alan Wolfe, who's been studying the urinary microbiome for over 20 years, and he uses Peezy for a lot of his trials because he said he knows he's comparing like with like. He's got the same quality of specimen. And he said, how could urine possibly be sterile? Your blood, the body, there's nothing sterile about the body. That's the myth busted. There we go. Urine is not sterile.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So
you're welcome.
As we come to the end of today's podcast, we realise that we isn't just we. It's data, it's diagnosis, and it's women's health being taken seriously. And today, Giovanna didn't just say it, she shouted it with clarity, fire, and facts. Thank you so much for that. Conversations like this, they're not always easy, and they're not as polished, but they're real and they matter. And in fact, this matters to, I believe, a stat that you've given to me, 10 million of us women. Before we go, please let our listeners know where they can find you online or how they can learn more about your work.
We have an Instagram page, which is Forte Medical or Peezy Midstream, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And if they can go to forte-medical.co.uk, it's all there.
Fantastic. And I encourage everyone listening to check those links out, and they'll be in the show notes too. Do follow Trailblaze Hers on Instagram, LinkedIn, or visit thetrailblazehers.com to stay updated on future episodes and behind the scenes content. Once again, I'm Disha Solanki with Giovanna Forte, co-founder of Forte Medical. Thank you for listening.